Who am I?
Richard Kazimer, media veteran.
Why I got in radio is because I'm good with a knife.
Contributor in Perth, Australia.
Our friend Richard Kazimer in the United States.
How are you guys enjoying the 19th century? Is that working out for you? How can you say, I'm not making fun of you as a race, I'm making fun of you as black performers?
I think as a country, Americans are as patriotic as the most rabid UK football hooligan.
Who am I?
Richard S. Kazimer.
Keeping you company overnight, Jon Lewis.
Hey, good morning. We're in the US. We've got a friend of ours tuned in. Richard, how are you, Richard?
I'm fine, John. How are you, sir?
Yeah, top of the world. What's happening with you, Richard?
Well, the reason I'm calling is I've been listening to your show, and we go back to Vincent's comments. In general, where you folks are getting your information about American politics and American issues is very skewed towards the right, not necessarily correct. You get a lot of information from Fox News, which is Rupert Murdoch. That's just a very small fraction of what's going on over here of true news representation. For one thing, our President, George Bush, has an average of 28% approval rating. What that means is that only 28% of the entire U.S. population that has been polled agree that this president is doing a good job. So how does that relate to John Howard, for example, or any reigning president or prime minister of any country in the world? And you can see how low this man's ratings are. To do a broad brush of Americans agreeing with the war in Iraq or sanctions against Iran or anything is not really true to how Americans feel about what's going on in the world and how America is represented in the world eye.
So give us some kind of idea, 28%. What have some of previous presidents, how have they rated? What's the average rating for a president?
Well, at least over 50%, but I would have to go back in history to Richard Nixon during the Watergate scandal and his second term as a president. You really can't get much lower than 28% for a seated American president in modern times. Even when Bill Clinton, at his lowest point in his second term, when it was revealed that he had sexual impropriety in intern, his approval ratings were still higher than George Bush's is now. Go figure.
Some people argued it actually made him more popular.
Yes. People said, well, fine. Somebody gets it on with an intern in the Oval Office. That's a hell of a lot more acceptable than sending 3,000 young men and women to their death in a war that we didn't approve of. The economy is the worst it's been. Gas prices are higher than they've ever been. Our constitutional rights are being violated. Wiretapping, as of a couple of days ago, the whistleblower protection. I'm not sure if you folks know what that is. Let's say, for example, people that are working for a government agency find out that that agency or people within that agency are violating or getting graft and corruption or doing things that are detrimental to the people that they serve, and that person goes and tells the press or anyone else that this is going on. Yes. Well, it used to be that that person could not be fired for revealing improprieties or illegalities in that agency. Well, now the Supreme Court here in America said, well, no, they can be fired even though they're reporting on illegalities of that company or that government agency. It is absolutely bizarre what's going on over here.
So there's no safety factor?
The safety factor is George Bush only has another 2.5 years to go in his administration, and then we vote for another president. But also in November, we have what is called midterm elections, and then congresspeople and senators are voted on their respective states. So what that will do is hopefully turn around that more Democrats or progressives will be in office so that they won't allow just this blanket a majority vote, which the Republicans hold now, so that they can do whatever they want. It'll turn that around. If the Democrats win in November, you'll see things being reversed, and then the Democrats will have subpoena power to actually subpoena George Bush and his administration to be accountable for the things they've done in the past 8 years.
My goodness.
I don't wish this, but it would not be out of the realm of possibility to see George Bush being hauled into the world court for war atrocities. I think what will happen, though, is that the Republicans will do this massive campaign to say, well, it's for the good of the country that we forget about this and move on. That's the thing, is we need to move on. If I've done something wrong, if I've broken into your house and I've violated your family and stolen all your goods, and then I'm someone who you would never expect to do it. Let's say if I was the police chief and I'm in a position of power, I would say, well, you know what, maybe I did that, but it's time for us to move on.
I'd like to think that we could. It's crazy, isn't it? That's the way we do it now. Are the people prepared to put up with it? I mean, at 28%, looks like they're putting up with it. Now, what would it take if the folks in America said, look, we've just had enough, we want George Bush out, and we want him out today? What would have to happen?
Because the Republicans, which is the Bush administration, his party, has the majority in the House and the Senate. So the Democrats do not have subpoena power and do an impeachment process, although there was an increasing amount of Republicans who are now against Bush. I don't think that will happen until he's completely out. I think what's going to happen is in November you're seeing a lot of Republicans now, congresspeople and senators, that are distancing themselves from the president under the full auspices of the Bush administration, only for them to retain their seats in their respective states. We could go on for an hour on this. It is so convoluted.
Yes.
It is also so calculated on the way the Republicans run their government as if it's a big business. That's what Republicans are all about. The conservatives are about no government, that no government should control any sort of corporation like Bechtel or Halliburton or any of the big oil companies.
Yes.
But in order to not have government control these huge corporations, you need to be the government. So that's why you're seeing tax cuts in the time of war favoring 1% of all the people who are making the money here in this country. You're seeing tax breaks for people who are millionaires, but no tax breaks for people who are lower or middle income, who have to pay $3.50 for gas, get no breaks, but the people who can afford to pay $3.50 for gas get plenty of tax breaks.
And it's something I think we might see a bit more about. I'll tell you, Richard, lovely to hear from you this morning, to get your viewpoint, and, of course, a bit of a treat to hear from you on the other side of the planet.
Big shout-out to everybody there in WA. I love you all. Love Perth and love Rio, and you're doing a great job, John, so keep it up.
Thank you. Good guy. He's a good guy, isn't he? Thanks, Richard.